Right, good morning, everybody. Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to this extraordinary council meeting. Welcome to members of the public and councillors and staff in the council chamber, and also to those who are watching online. Today is an extraordinary council meeting talking about the Water Services Delivery Plan, coming up with the option that we want to take forward for water delivery into the future. It is one of the most significant decisions that this council will be making, or pretty much any council for the last 20 years, given the size of water activity within council and what's being proposed. So I'm sure we're going to have quite some debate along the way. I want to make sure that we give everyone time to go through their thoughts and share their views on that. First of all, we'll have an introduction from the CE, and we'll get further introductions. And then we will ask for any questions to be asked. We do have Marlon Bridge from Department of Internal Affairs online, and he will be giving an update on where things are at for councils across the country, and also the view on the southern group that's proposed as our preferred option here today. So, councillors, any questions or anything before I hand over to the CEO? Okay.
Just sorry, Steve, do we have any apologies?
Yeah, I've just been reminded that by the CE, so I do need to ask, are there any apologies? Has John McCone been able to join us at this stage?
He's not online.
Okay, Councillor McCone is overseas at the moment. He's in a quite different time zone, so he's going to attempt to join, and if he does, then he will be able to participate. So unless he does, we'll accept an apology from him. Are there any other apologies? Okay, we move to accept those. Deputy Mayor Halalele, thank you, and Councillor Holding, thank you. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
And against? That's carried. Do we have any declarations of interest? I think it bears repeating. I declare that I have no interest in seeking the CE of any CCO, despite what rumours may be out there in the community. So get that one, that I have no interest to declare. So we'll now hand over to our Chief Executive, Alex, to introduce the report.
Thank you. And I want to start with a couple of acknowledgements. So first of all, acknowledging the mayors of our partner councils in the room. So all councils in Otago and Southern came together to do an initial assessment, and 4 councils, including Waitaki, Gore, Clutha and Central Otago, came together following that to form a genuine partnership that looked at all the options, including partnership options that would deliver benefits to all our communities. And I think it's been really great to see the spirit of partnership really focused on how we work together and how we get the best results for each of our communities. I also wanted to acknowledge the work of the staff in Waitaki District Council and all the other councils as well that have participated in this, as well as our contractors and partners. There's been a huge amount of work done to get us to this stage in what is a very short space of time. So I wanted to thank all of those people who have contributed to this work. By way of introducing the report, I first wanted to outline why we have this decision before us today. I think it's important to note, historically, councils as the main water providers for New Zealanders have wanted to do the best for their communities. But in doing this, they have overall underinvested in the water infrastructure needed to protect the residents and their environment. This was with a view to keeping rates low, but they were trying to do the right thing. And since Havelock North incident, successive governments have followed a path to raise standards and ensure a greater level of investment in water infrastructure. The current government and its agencies, whilst tweaking some of the standards, have not deviated from that. They are clear that higher standards need to be met and more investment is needed in water across the country. And this investment will not be paid by government. It needs to be paid by the users of the water. So that's been a consistent message from successive governments. And so meeting the standards comes at a cost. And in more rural areas, unfortunately, the cost per ratepayer or water user is higher than in urban areas. The government has changed slightly the reforms that the previous government initiated. but the local water done well reforms have the same intended outcomes: to raise the level of investment to meet the standards for drinking water and wastewater, to increase charges to meet those investment standards, and to essentially reduce the control councils have over what they invest in and what they charge for water, and put more control within regulators' hands to ensure that the investment is made. So we're not here because the mayor or myself or the council just decided we wanted to have a look at a different path for water. The decision before council is here because the law is changing, and within that law, all councils need to choose from a limited number of options how they're going to manage their water. And every option would mean big change to this council. And whatever option council chooses will then be put into a water services delivery plan, which will be assessed by the government as to whether it will deliver the standards and investment required and whether it's financially sustainable. We need to acknowledge that whilst we have invested well in our water infrastructure in recent years, we still have a huge amount of investment still required to ensure our drinking water and wastewater schemes are compliant, and also to replace our ageing infrastructure. The idea that all our water schemes are all right is just a myth. There is a big bill on its way, and whatever option is chosen, the cost to water users is going to go up. So one of the big considerations in the work we've been doing is how do we maximise efficiency so as to limit the increases in charges to the people of Waitaki. So what we have before you today is a difficult decision. The decision today is a strategic decision that will have long-term impact on the district and its residents for decades to come. Not just on their water and how much people pay and who provides their services, but on the district and the community as well as the rest of council. This includes an impact on what the council can and cannot afford to do for our district and community in the future. And it's a subject that generates strong feelings, as we've seen from the community consultation across our community there. But being a strategic and long-term decision that will impact generations to come, my encouragement is not just to take account of the feelings expressed in the consultation, which are important, but to also look at all the other information you've been provided, including the facts and analysis. It's also a decision where you don't have the perfect information or all the answers to every question. The government has set a deadline to submit water services delivery plans by the 3rd of September this year, and the Minister has been clear with all councils that there will be no extensions to this deadline. This has meant we've had to work at pace to enable a strategic decision to be made, but we've not had the time to develop all the details of how everything will work under each option. Added to this, the rules of the game haven't fully been set yet. We've still got to see the final form of the legislation, which will not pass through Parliament until after we are due to submit our water services delivery plan. So in coming to the recommendations in this report, we've undertaken a process of analysis of the deliverable options. The recommendations have not been driven by any vested interest, but instead a desire to identify the best option for the future of water and for the future of the council and our communities. So Morrison Lowe is our professional company and advisor with skills and expertise in this area. We're not commissioned to work up a joint CCO, but instead they were commissioned to analyse the viable options and how they might work. Concept Consulting is a consultancy with knowledge and expertise in the regulated utility industries, was not commissioned to endorse the findings of Morrison Lowe, but to critically review them and analyse the assumptions and test them to see if they're robust and sound. And Infometrics were not commissioned to endorse the conclusion of the work, but instead to test the work and the conclusions drawn. And as for myself and the team, we've worked to identify the best solution for the community, for their water, and the best solution for the council going forward as well after the decision is made. The recommended option, the joint CCO, is not in our personal interests. It will involve a lot more work if we go down that route and have the biggest impact and the biggest change on council. Moving water to a joint CCO will leave a smaller organisation with less responsibility for me and my team. Our responsibilities will be smaller in the future if you take the recommended option. But we're recommending the joint CCO option, which is against our personal interest because, in our view, based on the analysis and the facts, it is the best option for the council and the community and for the provision of their water. But in saying that, there is no perfect option. Every option has upsides and downsides to it, and these are presented in the report for each option. The joint CCO is recommended because the analysis shows it will produce the most beneficial outcomes for the community in relation to their water, and it will enable the meeting of standards required and deliver the investment required at the lowest cost. In addition, it will enable the council to still continue to meet its other needs, the other needs of the community, including investing in other community infrastructure. The joint CCO enables the council to retain a degree of control, recognising that the regulators will dictate a large part of what is delivered in any model. This enables the securing of the efficiencies while still being able to meet the other needs of the community and district. The other options will cost more, and in the case of the in-house option, the financial analysis shows that in the near future, the council will likely not have the ability to invest in other community and district infrastructure, and therefore may not any longer be able to meet the district and community needs. The in-house option enables the council to have the appearance of full control, but it needs to be recognised. This option, along with every other option, the regulators will have a large degree of control over what is invested in and what the charges are for water going forward. So this will put the future council in a tough position, having to explain to the community that why it isn't able to do the other things that it needs to do and invest in other infrastructure. And I've said this before, essentially at its core, the council will become a water company with a small council attached to it. Water will dominate all. Finally, included in the pack is an initial assessment by the government of the options and choices facing the four councils. And this is important information for your decision making. After a decision is made, a water services delivery plan will be developed based on your decision. And once agreed, before it is submitted to government, each council chief executive is required to, by law, to attest that it meets the standards and requirements set out by the government in its legislation. So for that reason, it's important to understand how the options stack up against those criteria. Once submitted to the government, the DIA will assess that water services delivery plan against their criteria and determine if it meets them or not. If it does not, councils will be required by the government to revisit the plan and decision. We may receive some help from Wellington in this as well, which will come at the cost of the council. Therefore, the government's initial view on the options is important as to whatever you decide is ultimately subject to the rules, requirements and laws set by government and parliament and their assessment of them. So I wanted to recognise it's a difficult decision and a difficult position all councils have been placed in, as ultimately we don't have a totally free choice on what happens to our water. We have a limited number of choices before us and need to fulfil the requirements of the legislation set by Parliament whilst making sure we do the best for our community.
Thank you, Mr. Parmley. And I was also remiss, didn't welcome our fellow mayors, the partners in this particular proposed joint CCO. So welcome to Mayor Bell, Mayor Ali and Mayor Cadogan. It's good to have you here. It's been a challenging journey to get to this point and really appreciate the collegiality and the openness which we've been able to work with, the selflessness that we've gone in, wanting to make sure that we've got something that works, that actually delivers for each of our councils and benefits all of us. It won't be equally, but that's not a problem as long as we all get good benefit out of it. And that's certainly our intention, which I appreciate, and appreciate you taking the time to be here today. So thank you. Just acknowledge that the decisions for those other councils will be made for Central Otago and Clutha will be made on Thursday, and for Gore will be made next Monday. So welcome and thank you. Okay, who are we going to next? It's going to DIA?
Yep, you go to DIA.
Okay, so welcome Marlon. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. So if, and Warren also from DIA, so Warren Ulasali, Marlon Bridge. So I'll just hand over to you, just if you could just introduce yourselves, and then it's just get an update on where things are at, both across the country and also how DIA views Waitaki District and how they view the southern grouping. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary. I'll kick off. So Warren Ulasali, Waitaki Councilor, I am one of the partnership directors at DIA and responsible for Otago South. I will quickly hand over to Marlon, who understands this sector with a great depth of knowledge. But before I do, I just thought I'd quickly respond to Gary's comments there around how the grouping and the efforts of Waitaki are seen by the government, both officials and at a political level, and then talk quickly about the process post September the 3rd. So firstly, just to relay to you the minister's, that's Minister Watts, Minister of Local Government, support and appreciation of the leadership that's been shown by Waitaki and this the Southern Waters grouping in general, and to echo Alex's earlier comments about the efforts made by the team that you have supporting this work. Marlon will give an overview of what's happening across the country, but just let me say now that in terms of the South Island and utilising the tools available for potential new models, this grouping is leading the way in the South Island. It's one of the larger groupings in terms of number of councils, and as I say, seem to be utilising the tools that are made available to achieve that ultimate goal of financial sustainability and meeting the service levels required. So with that, let me just talk quickly about what would happen September 3rd. So you have a proposal, you have a decision in front of you now. If, however, the council were to choose to go alone, what would happen is that plan would have to be developed, submitted by September 3rd. That would be assessed. And if it failed to meet the financial sustainability tests, there's a couple of options from there. The first inclination for the central government will be to work with the council to see what work can be done to get across that threshold and make that work. That would be in the form of a Crown facilitator. So that would be someone who would work in with the council with a view to come back. But bear in mind, the decision comes back to the council. So more work will be done, a proposal will be developed, and you'll be sort of back where you are now, making that decision. Potentially from there, one option is to go to a water service specialist. Now, you can actually go straight to the water service specialist, but just by way of explanation, I'll just talk through them sequentially. And so what you have there is, you're familiar with the LGA, that's akin to a Crown Observer, and you really want to avoid that situation for a number of reasons. One, it's with the Crown Observer, they're coming in, they're giving direction as to the work, and it is seen as the council having failed to meet the statutory requirements in terms of the water service delivery plan. So there's an optical reason to avoid that. But in terms of the substance of it, that role is very directive and looks across the council's finances. So the water service specialist will be looking across and say, all right, this plan is not financially sustainable. They are then able to look and say, well, perhaps some of the spending needs to be withdrawn over from this part of the council, or potentially lift the revenue stream, so by way of rates. So I'm just signaling that, I'm not trying to sort of scare the horses, but I just want to be clear about the role of that Crown facility, that water service specialist. And, at that point, sort of council's lost control over some very sort of fundamental decision making, as I suspect you might see it. So I just want to relay that. It is a worst case scenario, but one I think that is helpful to be understood as you go into this decision. So with that, I'll hand over to Marlon. As I say, Marlon will sort of talk through what he's seen across the country, but we'll be able to talk through some of the more technical details for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Warren. Kia ora koutou. Now, sort of try and pick everyone up after Warren's bringing us down a little bit, but I sort of want to give you a picture of what's happening around the country. So if we look at where we're at across all the councils, 67 of them, we've got over 70% in working arrangements of the councils. So the government's pleased with that result, and over 80% of those will form CCOs in terms of outside of those arrangements as well. A good example is Queenstown, which will look to set up a CCO but not form a joint arrangement. It's no excuse here, but there is a larger proportion of joint arrangements in the North Island. 44 councils, we're likely to see around 15 to 18 entities, water service entities out the back end of it. In the South Island, with the 23 councils, it's likely to be around 15. But that will just mean, from an economic regulation point perspective, the South Island will likely be a greater focus for the regulators. So just keen to paint that picture so everyone's aware, and if I reinforce what the government's objectives were with local water done well, first and foremost was a local solution, a local outcome in terms of decision making, higher standards of professionalism through these water service entities, greater levels of collaboration, so the government's not being shy and letting everyone know they want some level of collaboration from councils in terms of water service delivery. And I suppose the last one, which is about regulation, is more or greater consistency across New Zealand in terms of water service provision. So that's why we've got the introduction of an economic regulator and Te Mata Arawa Water Service Authority. And that is the piece that means there is no such thing as status quo. And I'd like to agree with Alex's comments in the way he's set this up for a discussion, because it is a significant decision. And he's made a lot of great comments in his statements around collectively working together. And it's really great to see the other mayors from the councils there supporting this collaborative effort to be in the room. But I'd also disagree with Alex in the fact that, I would say this is an exciting opportunity for the council to consider the future of water services to their community and your community. But to highlight a few things before we're happy to take any questions, I think you would have seen the information that the DIA has provided on what our thoughts are around the 4 councils coming together. And we are very confident that should you make the right decision, that you'll get a better outcome for the community should the pathway of the 4 councils eventually come out through this process. And there are a number of factors that have driven that outside of the financials, because the financials themselves, I could sit here and previously have told the council that, your OPEX is high and your water losses are high, your water use per population is high, and a number of other challenges you have with compliance around protozoa, bacteria, and a few of the other elements in terms of recovering depreciation. But I've also mentioned that you have got some really good things going for you in terms of evidence of planning and good planning, and a good waters team, and the debt headroom as a council to support what you need moving forward. But ultimately, the factors that I'm seeing outside of the financials in terms of this as being the right pathway for council is you've got the strongest leadership at the highest level. I haven't seen this level of collaboration across the mayors in any other council across New Zealand. So you should be commended for that. Through this grouping, as we've mentioned, you'll achieve financial sustainability. But I think there are other non-tangibles that I hope the council is considering as part of its decision. And the key thing for me is that greater long-term resilience with utilising the management experience across the 4 councils, as opposed to the current situation you have, which is good, but not as resilient as it could be. The continuation of local decision-making will also help achieve the local outcomes that you expect. But I would sit here and say scale provides a pathway to great opportunity. It will help with reducing the OPEX, will help with investing faster for compliance and growth. So from a consumer perspective, a customer perspective, a ratepayer perspective, you just need to look at the counterfactual on going alone and what the 10 years plus of double-digit price increases looks like, given your expectations on investment and some of the levels of addressing some of the inefficiencies the current operation does have. So I appreciate that the modelling has also been conservative that you've seen to date. Ours took a more aggressive perspective, I would suggest, but I would say more realistic. I've been involved in 3 of these types of setups now, including the setup of Watercare in 2010 Auckland Super City. And, you've got a lot of things going for you in terms of making sure that you can bring the benefits of what this looks like, not only on paper, but to reality. And I'd sit here and say, having had a lot of experience in this, I'd be keen, or I'd appreciate the opportunity to help you achieve that outcome should you take this pathway and bring it forward, the level of efficiencies and benefits to the community that this option does bring for you. So I could keep going, but I think I'm only limited to time, so I might pass back to you, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Marlon. Do we have any questions? So good, Councillor Holding, and then Councillor Thompson, then Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you both. Just a question on page 8 of our report, saying the proposed model has been put against government's test of revenue and financing tests and achieving intergenerational economic outcomes. I'll just say, would you be able to talk us through that test and how it's achieving the intergenerational outcomes economically? And also, I'm just wondering, for the scale there, originally the DIA numbers for the South Island investment was quite a large number of connections, but this one's a lot smaller. So just how we've met that now for that, intergenerational stuff. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So one of the great advantages of working more collaboratively with councils in a grouping is the benefits that a utility gets in terms of its ability to utilise debt more efficiently. So as a council, I think you're sitting at 175, and I know you're under that level. As a utility, you get closer to 500%. Now, I know a lot of people shy away from that capability or capacity and debt headroom and think it's a burden on communities. But when you actually think about what a water utility is about, it's more akin to operating a rental property than owning your own house. So a lot of people think you need to remove the debt levels, but actually when you're operating a business of any kind, or even a rental property, the last thing you want to do is try and eliminate the levels of debt you have, because there's some level of efficiency in maintaining a debt level commensurate with your asset and your revenues. You're a cash flow business as a water utility, and that's the focus on what is driving your ability to service more through debt. So that debt then opens up the opportunity at a faster pace to bring forward investment, to look at how you can identify spend to save initiatives. So those spend to save initiatives are things that will reduce your OPEX over time. So for example, Waitaki has a reasonably high water loss percentage, and you may or may not have it in your current plan to address. I haven't really looked at the details associated with that, but the opportunity to spend money up front and in capital to reduce long-term operational costs only benefits consumers in the long term. And a lot of councils currently don't have that availability to achieve those outcomes. So in terms of what it means for consumers, utilising that debt, whether short-term operationally or long-term for CapEx, and addressing matters of growth or compliance, only brings benefit when well managed. And I'll put the when well managed in there, but you've got scope and capacity to deal with that through leveraging scale to bring down costs in other areas, whether it's procurement, whether it's introducing greater investment through bringing on greater constructors to help deliver projects faster and more efficiently. But there are great opportunities created through this scaling. In terms of connections, so I hear you loud and clear on what those connections are, but at the moment, your population, I think, is around 24,000. So yes, there does bring challenges in terms of moving forward and what the regime does bring with economic regulation. But any form of scale at this point is effective in helping reduce the burden overall on ratepayers. So to that end, yes, there is some challenges with size, even with the 4 combined entities. But when we've spoken to LGFA and others that support this arrangement, they're certainly more favourable to this over councils remaining as individual councils at this stage. So I'm not sure if I'm addressing your question, but those are some of the thoughts I have.
Just on that size aspect, it's important to note, I think, to note that DIA are funding some work for Morrison Lowe to do modelling, Timaru and Mackenzie joining the group in future. So that's going to give us a good indication of what that looks like. So that work is being done, and that would get us over the 50,000 connection mark, and would give us a population size of around 130,000. But with obviously a fair bit of commercial water and also quite a lot of holiday homes and so forth, which raise that population aspect.
And me, I would also add to this. I mean, it's been obvious through this process that Waitaki is a very connecting council. You've had strong interest from surrounding councils above and beyond what I've seen in other regions. So, you know, for me, that strong interest demonstrates the high integrity the council has that in terms of other councils wanting to work with you, because when I've talked specifically in the South Island, trust seems to be an issue between councils or lack thereof in terms of why there has been resistance to working together. So I suppose I mentioned that as a commendation on the council and where it's at.
Thanks, Marlon. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Marlon. I just wanted to get your views on some of the councils who are proposing a transitional or deferred decision scenario where they're remaining in-house for up to 2 years while they continue to put the joint operations together. Is that acceptable in DIA's eyes?
The answer is yes, as long as the long-term, the short-term financial sustainability of the council is met. So let's pick on a council that's considering that. Rotorua Lakes is currently considering that with 3 other councils, and they are wanting to really interrogate the acceptable nature of what they're proposing with a lot of detail before they make a decision. So they will look to establish a water service entity at this point in 2028. But what we've said to them on an individual basis, if they're recommending they go individually, they'll be looked at as individual councils. But if there's a clear commitment to do this by 2028, then the group position will be considered for the financials beyond that. Remembering the legislation says full sustainability should be achieved by 2028. So the simple answer is yes, but that requires individual assessment of the council before making a final call on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you. Marlon, I had a couple of questions about the material you had circulated to us, or that we have seen coming from DIA. But can I just, based on what you've just said, it seems to me that that notion of a transitional arrangement, what I thought I took from your comment was that such a transitional arrangement would only be acceptable in DIA's eyes if in fact it led to something that was sustainable, i.e. the proposed or mooted amalgamation at the end of the 2-year period. Is that, did I interpret what you said correctly?
Correct.
Okay.
Otherwise, the council would need to be assessed for the 10-year period in its own right.
So in answer to the question then, the answer is yes, provided.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if I may, Miyakucha, through you, we saw some material that's in our report this morning from the Department of Internal Affairs, and your material says on page 230 of our 292-page agenda, establishing a Southern Water Done Well CCO is necessary for financially sustainable water services delivery. The next page says the establishment of a Southern Water Done Well CCO is likely the only option for delivering a water services delivery plan that meets the legislated financial sustainability requirements. So, I mean, put bluntly, which is it? Because one is more conditional than the other. If it's necessary, it's a little bit more absolute than is likely to be.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. So let me articulate why we've said is necessary. We've only been able to formally review the 2024 data, so 30 June 2024. And from our assessment of that data, we've seen that there are a number of inadequacies in the information that would support a financially sustainable entity moving forward. So what are examples for Waitaki? I think I've mentioned some of them in comments, but just so I'm really clear with you on what it means for Waitaki. There are challenges with bacteria and protozoa, investment sufficiency in the AMP would need to be addressed to ensure that we're comfortable that financial sustainability, investment sufficiency would be met under the water service delivery plan. So we have then reviewed the group information to provide an assessment for this year. What that does is take a different set of parameters, a different set of eyes than as if a council was going individually. So the reason I say that is because I go back to the objectives of the government, which is greater collaboration between entities. So in other words, what I am saying is we are providing two sets of eyes, one which takes less consideration when councils are forming groups, which meets the objectives, and one that takes a different viewpoint when an individual council submits an option to go alone. So I hope that clarifies why we may have said both, because one would be a lack of information, but the other would be the fact that we've had information that was old in detail, but not enough to provide sufficient needs to meet a sustainable outcome.
Following on from that, okay, so you've essentially said that this morning now that DIA's position is that this solution in front of us, establishing a Southern Water Done Well CCO, is necessary, and you've said that's the DIA's position. If that is the case, if any of the four councils come up with an alternative, what are you going to do?
So that will come down to what the alternative is. So let's utilise Waitaki as the say the council makes a decision to go alone and in-house. So we would be requesting a lot of detail around what that 10-year position is, over and above the high-level financials we've been provided in the group situation. So we want to go down to a level of detail that would support our conclusion that an in-house operation would be viable under local water done well. So it's really just to which degree of depth we go into to review the information that would support a decision by Waitaki to do an in-house operation.
Is it John?
It's John.
Okay, sorry, we just had Councillor McCone join on from far away. So
Okay.
carry on, Marlon.
No, I suppose it's just to give an indication of the level of scrutiny increases as different options are sought. So if Waitaki then said, hey, we're looking to join with Dunedin or Timaru, it's a different lens that's applied based on the relative size of the operation that's being established, harking back to when the minister identified the minimum criteria by which sustainability could be achieved through scale less relevant now, but important.
Can you mute, please, Jason?
Sorry, does that address your question, Councillor?
Yes, it does. One more, if I may. Again, looking at your assessment, I think this appears on page 231 of our report or our agenda. Again, I quote from your material. Each of the 4 councils is projecting substantial borrowing requirements for water services investment, which will be unsustainable on council balance sheets. So I guess the question is, what has led the DIA to that view? And again, if that is the view of the DIA, how could you possibly sanction councils operating independently? If that statement stands, then solo operation is a nullity.
Yeah, look, I can only go off the facts that I've got. So if you were to say that Waitaki will do in-house, then we'd be requesting further information as DIA to support that decision. So if you're going to breach your 175% or get near it because of the level of investment that's required to address compliance, growth, and other matters inside council, then we'd be wanting to see a lot more detail that would support that decision. And one level of review would be looking at each particular asset type and the investment required to bring that asset type up to standards. So I've mentioned bacteria and protozoa on some of your treatment plants is not up to speed, as according to last year's annual report. You may have done some work during the year, but that being the case, that will require a certain amount of investment, which we have as documented evidence of the previous attempts by other councils to address that through cost. And we have a good clue of what investments are required given the particular requirements of the council. So we make an overall assessment on an AMP based on specifics within that around what needs to be addressed. But that itself, through the water utility that would be a group offering, would allow it to increase that debt capacity and therefore not be an issue, because you'd be looking at a target which is closer to 350% or 500% if you get a letter of support from the LGFA, which would take the realms of operation and investment outside of debt being an issue in the short to medium term.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? No, that's all. So thanks very much, Marlon, for joining us. You're welcome to carry on listening in if you like. But thank you for your time, and thanks, Warren. Welcome, Councillor McCone. Thanks very much for joining us. I think it's late at night for you, is it?
Good 12. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for staying up. Okay. Right. So, councillors, do you have any other questions for officers? Councillor Thompson.
For you, Mr. Chair, will voting today be done by division so that the community can see who is voting for what?
That's called for. It's an option within standing orders. I do have a question. So I just need to go back to the start. The question for officers is basically how does the report take into account the concerns raised by submitters, regardless of which option they have chosen? Because obviously we have people who have chosen different options of the 4 that we put out there. I know councillors are wanting to respect those submissions. Inevitably, they have to ignore some if they're doing that. But how are they taken into consideration, people's comments and feedback?
Thank you, Mayor Kircher. Look, I think as far as possible, the comments from the submitters have been included in the report. both at a summary level to sort of aid decision making, with comments about beside the key themes that came out of the submissions and the potential impact of them. But that sort of summary is just there to sort of aid the decision making process, and why the full copies of the submissions are attached to the agenda so that you can consider those in full. I mean, it's really in the time frame that we're operating under. It's not possible to completely reanalyze things and produce additional reports based on every issue raised in the submissions or even the key themes, but they have attempted to be addressed by the tables included in the report.
Thank you. Is there any legislation that requires submissions to be treated as a referendum in this?
Question better for the chief executive, but no, the submissions are not a referendum. So no.
So, I mean, just to add to that, for the benefit of those on the live stream, in the reports pack, under each option, the main themes that were raised, officers sought to respond to that. It's not necessarily addressing it. We can't overcome every concern that was expressed out there, but we sought to respond to that. In terms of the legislation, we have some legal advice that we took around as a partnership around the weight given to the consultation. And quoting from this, the Preliminary Arrangements Act does not require a council to make a decision that accords with public consultation feedback. In accordance with the well-established principles of consultation and local government decision-making, the key consideration for councils should be that the views presented by the public are received with an open mind and be given due consideration in the council's decision-making. So the decision, as I outlined in my introduction, is to take account of all the information, which includes taking account of the consultation results, but all the other information that is presented as well is pertinent. The consultation was not a referendum. It was seeking an indication of views from the community about the different options.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, Paul, one of the Mr. Hope, one of the overarching issue that emerged in terms of the concerns expressed by submitters regarding a joint venture was loss of local control. And I notice in the officer's comments that they make the point that that is an issue. And I noticed the Morrison Low assessment of the options, the three options, actually scored the joint venture as a -2 in that regard, although it still came out as the most as the preferred option. But the officers' reports also indicated that all of the solutions were going to actually involve a diminution of control because of the new powers conferred upon the Commerce Commission and Te Mata Arawai. But beyond that general comment, there's nothing at this stage that says, here are some means by which we think this loss of control issue could be addressed. Has anyone within the four-council consortium actually given some thought to that?
I think, all four parties have, and that is why there is an emphasis on the need to give some detailed thought to the establishment of the entity and the relationship that will have with its shareholder committee, and how the entity is set up, because there will be a significant, that will really determine the level of input and control that the shareholders have on the operation of the CCO if it was established. I think the key point that's been made by a couple of the previous speakers is the status quo. There is no status quo in this case. That it is going to be a very different environment which water operates under, both in terms of not only the Commerce Commission but Te Mata Arawai, but also what was suggested in the third bill that is yet to be enacted. The concept of a water services strategy that whoever is delivering water services needs to develop that will be essentially signed off by those two other parties. That will be the primary document that sets out the strategy and the financial approach and every other aspect that the company will need to follow. So having a significant input into that under the sort of restated letter of intent process, I think will provide as much control as is practical.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's an answer to this next question other than I agree or yes, it's a shame, but it does seem to me that these are issues that it might have been helpful to have resolved by now, and I accept the fact that that's problematic. But in terms of actually taking any position today, do you deem it prudent if there are certain quite key concerns that are not, if you like, satisfactorily addressed, or don't at least have some alternatives, some remedies on the table for consideration?
So, Mr. Palmer referred to, this is a very difficult environment to make this decision. Not only is the third bill not passed, it's only just come out of, or has committee comment on Friday. So yeah, it's very, again, it was a very long piece of legislation that we sort of heard back to in December and in February. Plus, there's been information coming out really all across this year about further direction and clarification on various matters that were covered in the legislation. There's statements from both regulators, from the government, from the minister. So it has been a moving feast, but the thing they have been very clear on, that these plans need to be delivered by the 3rd of September, and there is no extension, no deadline, and a decision needs to be made by them.
Thank you, Mr. Hope. Any other questions? I'm going to move from the chair the recommendations in the report as they are written, with one addition, which I'll move now because I think it's appropriate to have it in there as well. So add a number 5. Schedules at the soonest possible opportunity Facebook Live sessions to present information on next steps for our water services delivery plan, the Southern Group's 4th water, and the proposed structure for the new joint CCO.
Could you please repeat that?
So number 5, schedules at the soonest possible opportunity Facebook Live sessions to present information on next steps for our water services delivery plan, the Southern Group's 4th water, and the proposed structure for the new joint CCO. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. So speaking to that, and what I want everyone to have as much opportunity to respond as possible, to give their thoughts, and if councillors are happy, we can go around the room and do that, if that's seemed to be a fair way of doing it. You happy with that? Okay. So speaking to the motion, today we're making one of the most significant decisions of the term and of recent times. Our water services delivery plan affects close to 1/3 of our council spending. It impacts the health, well-being and affordability of life for every resident, rural and urban, young and old. We received 300 submissions. 54% preferred keeping water services in-house. Around 25% supported some form of joint service model. These views matter, and we acknowledge them with respect. But consultation isn't a referendum. I've been clear about that from the start. It's one important input. Our job is to take submissions into account alongside all of the other evidence: financial, operational, legal, and strategic. I know many of you feel under pressure, and not just from the complexity of the issue, With an election around the corner, some are being told that their vote today will be used against them. But leadership isn't about avoiding pressure. It's about stepping up despite it. We weren't elected to follow opinion polls. We were elected to make informed, courageous decisions that serve everyone in the district. We were everyone in the district, not just the 1% who made submissions or those who shout the loudest. Making a decision that differs from the majority of submissions is not a failure to listen. It's a sign that the issue is complex. No single view holds the full picture. Our job is to make decisions for 100% of the people, not just for that 1% who submitted. When we look at submissions, we should see what is there, noting the preferences and the concerns. Our job is also to see what isn't there. Have we seen submissions from all sectors of our community? Do we believe that all sectors have had the ability to submit regardless of socioeconomic status, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of digital access? I don't think we have. And I ask you to decide for yourself, who is not represented here? Are we taking care of their needs? Are we making a decision today that looks after our most vulnerable as well as our most able? Are we willing to deliver them water at higher costs than a joint CCO would? If we voted solely on which option had the most submissions, we wouldn't be leading, we would be abdicating leadership. That is not what we were elected to do. Let's be clear, this reform proposed process isn't optional. It's being driven by central government, one way or another, for the past 6 years. All councils must submit a water services delivery plan to the Department of Internal Affairs, which must meet the financial sustainability test. If it fails, it's sent back. If it fails again, a water services facilitator will be appointed by the minister and the decision will be taken out of our hands. DIA have reviewed our data and the Southern Group's work. Their advice is clear: a joint CCO is likely the only option that meets the test. The joint CCO proposal gives us economies of scale that reduce long-term costs, shared investment that we can't achieve alone, stronger capability to meet new regulatory standards, and local delivery with Waitaki-based maintenance teams retained and fast response times protected. We've also ensured protection for our rural water schemes, recognising them as the fourth water. They have inherently different needs, and this model will keep them visible and well supported. Even if we keep services in-house, we are still losing some of the control we once had. Taumata ROI and the Commerce Commission will oversee service quality and pricing. So the real question becomes, who's best placed to operate within this new environment? A council with 30 other business activities or a purpose-built expert organisation? I've compared this to Network Waitaki, a publicly owned company governed well, delivering focused, efficient, responsive services. We already know this model can work for our community. The greatest strength of Network Waitaki is not their geographic area, it's their focus on a single utility. We must also face the cost trajectory. Staying in-house will mean significantly higher rates over time. Those increases will hit our most vulnerable residents the hardest. If we do this right, and we must do, we will also encourage other councils to join with our Southern Group, strengthening it further and lowering costs across the board. This decision is historic. It redefines how we deliver a critical service that has been within successive councils for over 100 years. It's not easy, and for me, it'll be one of the final major decisions I make as mayor. But I believe the Southern Group joint CCO is the best path forward for service quality, for affordability, for regulatory compliance, and for long-term resilience. I respect that each of you must make your own decision, and I know you'll do it with the seriousness and care it deserves. So I simply ask this: let's lead with integrity, let's do right by all of our people, and let's make a decision that future generations will thank us for. Thank you. Just mindful of you there online, John. Would you like to go next, or would you like to be at the end?
Yeah, I'd just like to catch up. I missed a bit of the start, so if that can be summarised, I might pick it up on the way through. I have my views, but I'd like to hear a few others first.
Yeah, no, it's because we'll come to you last. So go Go to Deputy Mayor Halaleli.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for the opportunity. I guess for today, I just want to acknowledge that it's a challenging discussion that we're having, and it's one of the biggest decisions that we will make, as confirmed by Mayor Gary Kircher. And I think for me, the focus of today is actually who should be our communities of interest. I think that's what it is, and who are our natural fit, what is our locality that we should be helping to support. And as we govern for collective impact, we still need to do consider the societal risks that are evident and that are quite obvious, but it also collides with our strategic risks. And it's quite a challenge to try and reconcile some of those. And for those that are standing or those that are not standing, that doesn't really matter. I think what we need to do is to come to a middle ground where the risk needs to be taken to support the strategy to provide the most safest, compliant, affordable water service for our community. But it doesn't come without the risk of not taking into account the communities of interest that we serve. For me as a parent and as a representative of the community, a natural fit for the community is actually going north in the longer term. But we do have to consider what will our water service delivery look like in 10 years' time, not just in the next year or two. So it is a challenge. You know, the most appropriate or the local approach as possible is what's important for me when I am making this decision. And that's why I'll be going against the recommendation as it stands. It's not a surprise, or it could be a surprise, but I think for me, the focus should be on the communities of interest. It is a step, it's quite brutal in terms of where we're heading towards. And I do think that we do need to take a step phase approach with where things are going. So that's where I will stand, and that's what my position will be.
Thank you. Councillor Linwood.
Thank you. This has without a doubt been the biggest and most complex issue that I've faced as a first term councillor. It has tested every aspect of the role, from grappling with dense reports and technical briefings, hours of reading, to actively listening to our communities and considering long-term consequences. After careful consideration, I want to make my position clear. I will not be voting in favour of the preferred option presented in the report, and instead I will be supporting keeping water services in-house. I've read the reports, I've read the emails, I've read the submissions, I've followed the discussions on social media, I've spoken with many people in our community. The message from the public has been consistent, clear, and overwhelmingly opposed to the preferred option. To ignore that would, in my view, be a failure of representation, and I cannot in good faith claim to represent my community if I knowingly vote against what the majority have so clearly expressed they don't want. We often speak about the importance of consultation, but consultation must be more than a tick box exercise. It only has meaning if we genuinely listen and are prepared to act on what we hear. Disregarding the voices of the very people who elected us feels fundamentally wrong, in my opinion. I don't take this decision lightly, and I'm aware it carries consequences either way, but I believe my role is not to override the community, it's to represent them, and that's what I intend to do. For this reason, I will be voting in support of keeping water services in-house.
Thank you. Councillor Holding.
Sorry to come with anything written prepared today. I just came to attend and see, but I think today's decision is bigger than just water as well. It's kind of trying to answer what is the purpose of local government and what is the future. So I think there's a lot still attached to that I'm not comfortable with dismantling on these decisions little bits at a time without having a wider conversation. I get nervous that legislation's still coming out and it's not quite in place yet, so it's sort of an uncertain feature, makes it harder to make a decision. The rural legislation is still not out, so I think our community's given us a strong direction that they want some more time to look at the bigger picture. So supporting at this stage, staying in-house.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Kircher. First of all, welcome, Mayor Bell. I'm a child of your patch, albeit long before you appeared on that patch, but welcome. Mayor Kircher, I have consistently taken a stand on localism. I also, when elected to this council, took an oath to serve the ratepayers of Waitaki, as well as my Waihemo ward. I've heard a couple of statements today, one from Mr. Hope acknowledging that the tight timeframes that we're under has constrained some of the information delivery. We have been critical of some misinformation that was delivered in our own community. But maybe we need to look at our own performance as well, because as the information has come before me, I've seen a change. And for example, the original modelling was done on at the length of our long-term plan. But when the modelling was taken out to a 30-year overview, it had a slightly different delivery. I've also heard the statement today that councils will have a degree of control. Well, I'm afraid if I'm true to my belief in localism, I want more than just a degree of control. I will therefore be voting against the motion.
Councillor Ryan.
Thank you. Paul, this one's been weighing heavily. I actually feel quite physically ill in the lead up to today's meeting. Not helped, I think, by the process that's felt rushed. That there are still so many unknowns, and there seems to be a bit of a push to ignore such a strong public sentiment. We've heard the arguments downplaying the results of the responses that we've had in the consultation, because it doesn't represent our whole district of 24,000. But if that's an argument that's been used before, and it makes me really uncomfortable every time it is. If we adopt that, then every consultation we've ever run sort of becomes meaningless. And if not enough people are engaging or not understanding the issues that we're consulting on, then that's on us. At this stage, I don't think I can support the Southern Water Done Well model, and I don't do that because I'm against collaboration. The government's clearly signalled that we're expected to be actively considering working with other councils, and I am supportive of exploring that approach if we can find the right partners and the right structure, and we can be really confident that that's the right fit for us. And I do want to acknowledge that affordability is a real challenge, and I understand the argument that a CCO might offer more financial headroom in the future. But when we talk about debt limits and financial headroom, we have to remember whose money this is. Whether we collect it as a council or a CCO does it for us, it's still coming from the same pockets, the ratepayers and the residents of Waitaki, from us, from the people who elected us to represent them. That debt doesn't disappear. And I know that choosing a different model, whether that's in-house or with a different grouping, could put real financial pressure on us and may limit our ability to invest in other areas. And that's a risk I take very seriously, especially because those other areas, like, parks and recreation, the arts, are things I care really deeply about. But despite that, I believe that we have to play a leading role in creating our own destiny. And I just think that we need to take some more time to make the right decision for us. Everyone around this table, has taken their own approach to working through that decision. I totally respect that, but for me, it's just not a path that I feel comfortable supporting at this stage.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cowles.
Thank you, Chair. This, like Councillor Ryan, there's not many things in this world that deprive me of sleep, and this has. There's so much information to digest and so many viewpoints, and I've been sitting on a pinnacle of a seesaw for quite some time. But as much as we've had an awful lot of information to digest, it's been one of the most complex and challenging decisions we've faced. And I want to start by acknowledging the strength of feeling in our community around water services. I've heard it through submissions, conversations, public feedback, and it's been loud and clear. People want to keep it local, and I understand and respect that deeply.
This issue is bigger than just today or the next election cycle. Water infrastructure requires, planning requires thinking in decades, 50 to 100 years. And it demands a level of technical knowledge and resourcing that goes well beyond what most councils, including ours, are currently set up to deliver. We've been fortunate to receive robust peer-reviewed advice from Morrison Low Infometrics, Concept Consulting, the DIA and more, all pointing to the joint CCO model as the most financially and operationally sustainable path under a new regulatory environment. I don't dismiss that advice lightly, but at the same time, I also recognise that the risks in fully committing to a model before we have fully explored every viable option. I believe there's merit in considering a stepped approach, one that allows us to strengthen our internal capacity, explore shared services or partnerships within our communities of interest, and continue meaningful discussions with adjacent councils. This gives us the ability to build towards a sustainable model without immediately locking into a structure that may not fit our community long-term, particularly when the shape and function of local government itself may change in the coming years. I want to be clear, supporting an in-house model, even temporarily, does not mean ignoring the risks. We will still need to invest in systems, staffing, compliance, IT, and much more. But we can also be smart about where we share services, how we stage investment, and who we partner with to reduce overhead and increase capability. We must be proactive and not just reactive. And importantly, whichever model we choose, we do not lose ownership of our assets. If the landscape changes, we retain the ability to adapt, shift, and reevaluate. This flexibility, I believe, is crucial. Water has been subject to short-term reactionary decisions for far too long, often made by councils with changing faces and limited technical insight. That's a big part of why we're in the situation we are now. If we're going to do this differently, we must plan smarter, we must think longer, and remain open to evolving our model as better options emerge. So my view is this: let's not rush into a joint CCO model, but let's not close the door on it either. Let's take a staged approach, build our internal capability, keep the dialogue open with our neighbouring councils, and create a governance structure that allows for regional collaboration, professional expertise, and long-term thinking that meets all of our requirements. Path I'll be supporting today.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mikacha. Well, obviously the submission process has had a considerable influence on people's thinking, because I think the minutes will show that earlier in the year when the preferred option proposal was put to us, it was voted, the full council preferred option was voted for unanimously. I stand to be corrected in that matter. There may have been a vote against it or an abstention, but it was certainly fairly widely accepted. I would make the point, and it's been made by others, and I noticed there was a letter in the paper on Friday, which I may briefly quote. Although Waitaki Council's preferred option for district water control is a new joint council controlled organisation, CCO company with Gore, Central Otago and Clutha district councils, a clear majority of Waitaki voted to retain it in-house. Now, that's simply not correct. 161 people doth not a clear majority make. That's an inescapable fact. And I noticed there's been a press release put out saying we have no mandate. Well, in fact, I don't think 161 people, 1.195% of the population, well, that's the total tranche of submitters. I don't think it can be argued that they necessarily have a mandate either. It is perhaps salutary for first-term councillors to note that the 300 submissions here is only a third of those that were actually attracted to comment on the proposal to sell the sections of Forester Heights. My view is one that I come to with some reluctance because I share Councillor Thompson's endorsement of and passion for localism, and have advocated for it vigorously around this table, and have argued that we should be promoting localism more energetically in Wellington as an individual council and as a grouping with other councils. The fact is, we are not Switzerland. The local government here is not treated with the respect that it should be treated with. We don't have the autonomy and independence of cantons in Switzerland. And it's quite clear that post Havelock North in 2016, the two major parties in the New Zealand Parliament have both formed a view that water needs a radical overhaul in terms of how it is administered and provided and supplied. One wanted to have 4 companies, then modified to 8, and they were going to be nationalised, presumably without, or looked as though it was going to be without consultation. The alternative proposal mooted by the coalition government, agreed to clearly by 3 parties, is essentially a softened version of that original proposal. It does talk about local water being done well. It does propose that there is some choice available to councils, but in point of fact, being brutally pragmatic about it, that choice is substantially limited. And I would say that if you look at the legislation that's been passed and is going to be passed, yes, there appears to be a benevolence and a benign approach to the transformation and the reform, but inside the velvet glove, there is an iron fist. And we've heard DIA today say this 4-council CCO is necessary. That's what their spokesperson has said. Spokesperson has also said that they will respond in terms of councils that don't necessarily go along with their conviction that there should be groups, organisations formed or links formed between councils. And again, I would just refer, I hope every elected member around the table has read the minister's letter. It's again explicitly clear that he wants councils to work together, and 70% of them around the country are doing so. If you look at the situation that we have here in Waitaki, some of the submitters insisted that, you know, we were fantastic and everyone else was in terrible shape. That's not necessarily the case. If you look at the Morrison Lowe report, and I think it's actually endorsed by DIA, 13 of our 15 drinking water schemes serve a population under 1,000. Over half of the WDC's water schemes were under long-term consumer advisories in 2023, affecting an estimated 1,478 people. We've got the highest water loss rates in Otago and Southland, estimated to be as high as 60% in Kurau. And there's $430 million of planned investment over the next 10 years. If you look also at Morrison Lowe and Concept Consulting, and clearly we either accept that these people are professionally competent and have done a job that defends their reputation and won't damage it, or that there's a kind of collective and absolute level of incompetence on the part of everybody who's given us advice. And frankly, I think that's utterly untenable. But you have Morrison Lowe's third report indicating annual savings of 9.9 million in 2034, 13.5 is the high estimate from Concept Consulting, 40 million savings in 2054, 65 million estimated by Concept Consulting. The grounds on which they have come to these conclusions are persuasive. If you care about people, if you care about families, if you care as parents about children, if you care about costs, then every report we have had says this solution is the cheapest. And it is irresponsible, in my view, to walk away from that, predicated simply on the fact that a number of 161 people have said they like an in-house idea because we will keep control. Well, we may not. The powers of Te Mata Arawai and the Commerce Commission are going to be quite considerable and impactful, and they can dictate price increases or reductions as they see fit. So it is problematic whether that degree of, well, it's a fact that the degree of control we have now will not be maintained. I believe there is a solution. The shareholder council could simply have a power of veto on any program of works that is not agreed to by all 4 participating councils. That would be my solution in terms of local control. But I would just finish. I thought one of the most persuasive submissions that I read, and there were a lot of very persuasive submissions and a lot of very considered arguments, including some that saw the logic of a geographic connection north with Waikato, Mackenzie and Timaru, predicated on the shared use of the Waitaki River. But this was a submission that I would just probably vainly encourage you to think again about before you vote. Came from Linton Winder, who's lucid and coherent, and from time to time energetic critic of the council. Here's what he said. A few years ago, I campaigned against a proposal to develop Forester Heights. This was a simple proposal which could be easily understood by anyone, and where the opinion of a member of the community was perfectly valid, whether for or against. The Water Done Well project is at the other end of the scale. Unless a given community member has a genuine and deep understanding of the issues around water treatment, distribution, treatment and infrastructure maintenance, then just their opinion is not helpful. This is because technical knowledge is a prerequisite for making the correct decision. So I urge the council to base their decision not on this consultation, but on the technical information provided to them by experts in the field. This consultation is not a tool for making the correct intergenerational and long-term decision that will impact future communities. The issues are far too complex. So please make a decision which you genuinely believe to be correct, regardless of the feedback received. I also urge the council to discount those shrill voices that discount options on the basis of their own prejudice. Having worked as a pollution specialist for the UK's Environment Agency for over 5 years, I have some understanding of the complexity, cost and difficulties of water resource management. It's page 84 of the 300 plus pages of submissions if you want to go and read it. But well, on that basis, I think how I will vote has been made reasonably clear.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Councillor Percival.
Yeah, excuse me. I agree with a lot of what's been said, but I'd just like to remind at a lower level, not at a high level, but getting down to the basics, that all the work that we've accomplished in the last decade through limited funding and some borrowing, of course, but you know, we did the Hamneck. We've got 2 new reservoirs. We've got a state-of-the-art treatment plant in Merrimut. We've had total renewals in Kakanui, Western, Mahino. What we've done in town here, Eden Street, Rebel Street, Reed Street, Humber Street. We've done amazing stuff here to maintain obviously our level of service and improve it, but also future-proof it. Now, we've done this with cleverly well-structured loan arrangements and the funding that we actually get from the ratepayer. I really believe that we can keep up this momentum. It'll be a huge challenge, but we've got to be very smart in the way we look at our projects, how we fund them, how we organise, how we prioritise. I know all the propaganda that's been put out, whether it's, well, it's propaganda, I shouldn't say that, I suppose, but it's all been so negative. I mean, we've got to be positive about this. I mean, we can do it, and I will be voting against this motion, and I do believe there is a way we can come out of it. Maybe in the future we do have to, and if we get the 2-year gap, if we get it permitted for that with DIA, then we'll be able to sort out where we can go at that point when we see where we are. But I mean, all this negativity really makes me angry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blakely.
Thank you, Mayor Kuchar. Just before I speak to the motion, I just have a procedural question. If if there is an alternative to be put forward, which which we all have in front of us for the meeting today, would you prefer it be put forward as an amendment now or subsequent to the header being put?
It can't be done as an amendment because it's a direct opposite to what the motion actually is.
Is it a direct negative or?
The motion in front of us is for a joint CCO. The motion that you're proposing is a direct negative to that.
So just to clarify, a member could propose an amendment to the existing recommendation, but if it is a substantially different motion, that would, understanding orders, be a substitute motion, which needs to be considered after the initial recommendation is put to the vote.
Okay, thank you. I guess it's been good just listening to all the perspectives shared today, and I can I can see the arguments from both angles that have been put across. I guess Mr. Palmer, you mentioned that the decision today is a strategic decision for the future of the district, and to Deputy Mayor Halalele's point back at the beginning, we need to be considering our communities of interest. Mr. Palmer, you also talked about the information that's been provided being centered around the facts and analysis, and I think while we've canvassed the Southern Water Done Well option to a pretty high level of detail, albeit with a lot of questions still remaining, I just simply ask, where is that detailed analysis for the in-house singular CCO and the northern options? And I think from those angles, the details haven't yet been satisfactorily canvassed. I think there was discussion around the Southern Group being commissioned to find, or Morrison Lowe being commissioned to find the best option, but that was amongst the core group, not a grouping that was landed on necessarily through a strategic overview from an elected member perspective right back at the beginning. And I just challenge some of the commentary that where does the analysis actually show that we can't meet our community needs? I mean, post the consultation document coming out into the community, we saw a 30-year debt projection, which included water and non-water related capital works, and it largely fits within the debt profile, assuming we go down the path of getting a credit rating. So I think some of the key points that have been actually made this morning are a reason to actually not vote in favour of the recommendation today. On debt and available headroom, I think the Morrison Lowe modelling actually at one stage when we were briefed, there was emphasis laboured on the point by our consultants to show that combined modelling doesn't actually borrow more than the in-house arrangements combined. So I think to the DIA point earlier that access to debt is necessary, to achieve what we need to achieve, I think that point's moot. And I think we heard this morning around the spend to save initiatives that would be enabled, and I'd just simply suggest that a tighter financial environment would probably drive the necessity of spend to save behaviour more so. I think we've heard clearly from others that there's a high level of discomfort around the direction we're heading, and so on that basis, I will indicate that I'll be going against the motion that's on the table at present, and just flag that I would like to move an alternative motion following the the results of this.
Should this be lost? He says. Councillor McCone.
It's very awkward. I don't even know where to start. As everybody has said, the amount of thinking and everything else that's gone into this has been incredible. And I really commend what has gone on before with the Southern Water Group and everything else, and the thought that's gone in there. On the other side of the coin, water is an essential service, and you must be able to control your destiny by controlling your water supplies. Your water supplies and your own environment must be up to speed, and I think you've got to clean your own house first before you start joining other things. And I'm wondering if we're actually putting a roof on a building without a foundation. I've been involved with rural water supplies for 30-40 years, and what has come and been seen is that when you get a third or fourth party that doesn't understand what's going on, the cost rises and the actual physical distribution and maintenance of those schemes actually decreases, and you pay a lot of money and get nothing else done. It's hard. I can see where they're trying to come to the future. The legislation is telling us to go in that direction. It is very awkward to make a decision when the legislation hasn't itself been finalised. And I would like to see a step process from the bottom to the top rather than from the top to the bottom. So at this stage, until there's more clarity, will not be supporting this.
Thank you very much. I'll just, someone's got their microphone on. Twice. All right, Councillor McCone, can you mute? Thank you. I think we know where this is going to land, but I will exercise my right of reply because there's been a number of things that have been raised. I mean, this is not a rushed decision. This has been a decision that's been at least 6 years in the making. It's a 50+ year decision that we need to make. And I don't know how much more we can do to make it. But I have listened, and I just simply haven't had my mind changed about the imperative of making sure that we keep water as affordable as possible to all of our residents and ratepayers across our district. The cost of water is too critical for too many people to ignore that. Going to that, the modelling that's from Morris and Lowe indicates that in the first year of operation, $100 saving on what the costs would otherwise be. 6 years later, that's risen to almost $200 per household. If you go 5 years further into that, that becomes $475 per household. Now, a lot of the people who have submitted, they're not worried about that. They can afford that. That's okay. Councillor Blackley, you said, you know, for losing control for $180 a year, that's okay. We're actually looking long-term at greater savings than that. And to me, that's not okay. That is going to impact people severely, people on the lowest incomes and people on who absolutely just cannot afford it. So that is the place I'm coming from. I don't know what motivation people do give out in the community when they go on about, you know, why we're doing things, because I don't think they actually ask themselves that. But we are elected to lead. We voted in to take into consideration all the information. Many people I speak to, as much as they might be against or for particular options, they also acknowledge they elected us to make decisions, to gather all of the information and make the best decision possible. And that's something we want to do. We are making decisions based on imperfect information. That's just the nature of it. None of the options, including the proposed motion that Councillor Blackley is bringing, none of them have full information on them, and we're going to be unsure of some of the detail. That's the nature of it. We do have a mandate. The mandate is, when we were elected, that we get on and we do make decisions. We take into account those submissions, and for the people who say they don't want to lose control, well, whatever option, they're going to lose some control. That's the reality of it. they're worried about the cost. Well, if they're worried about the cost, then the joint CCO is the best option. Short-term decision-making by councils has led us to a lot of the issues, and Councillor Blackler during our long-term plan noted that the fact that we're not funding depreciation on water assets for the next year or 2 years. That's fundamentally a pretty major thing, and it's been done because we're trying to keep rates down and we're trying to make ends meet for everyone. Those are the types of decisions we make, but they're not the types of decisions that a CCO would make. So the modelling for Timmer and Mackenzie is about bringing them on board and having a larger group. No one has convinced me as to why we need to be in a particular grouping because of some future unitary authority might come out of that. We haven't discussed that in any way, and no one's been able to tell me why that's important when we don't do it for our lines companies. We don't do it for a lot of our other utilities. The debt headroom is an issue because we do use all of it. The modelling showed a huge increase in the water debt. It didn't show any increase in the other debt. And that's a problem when in 10 or 20 years' time, we've got more bridges that we've got to replace, and we don't have any debt headroom left to actually afford that. Those are the impacts that we're talking about with this. Those are the things. It's not fancy things that we want to have extra debt headroom for. It's some of the fundamentals which are coming and which are going to hit us. So that's my concerns. It's my motivation for trying to get the best deal for our community. Just as I know that each of you thinks that what you are proposing is going to get the best deal as well. But we can't go past what Councillor Hopkins said about the fundamental agreement by a whole lot of different organisations and people around what the trajectory is for costs in the future. So with that, they'll wrap up the debate and we'll go to vote. So as indicated by Councillor Thompson, he'd like it votes recorded, so that is fine. So those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Those against?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so that motion is lost. Councillor Blackler, you have your alternative motion.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kircher. Would that be okay? Thank you. Just for the benefit of others who haven't seen the alternative motion, all councillors have a copy. Mayor Kircher, would you like me to read it out, or
no, I think as long as it stays there for a time, people online can read that. So do you want to so you are moving that?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Linwood, thank you.
So speaking to the motion, I guess, I'll just start by asking a few questions, which are, have we canvassed all the other available alternatives? Have we understood the consequences for this organisation, its people, and the future of this council if water is gone? Didn't we just go through transformation, which was the breaking down of silos, only to turn around and look at creating a whole new one in a separate entity? Are we across the shifting landscape in terms of local and regional reform? Does this apply a different but necessary context to our thinking? And if so, who are our communities of interest? Would we look south or to our northern neighbours for what seems to be a more logical and, in fact, in some cases, already established grouping? What has been proposed earlier in the paper it just doesn't feel right, and on some level at least this has got to be in your gut stuff. And we are dealing with physical things, and where they are actually matters, and I believe basic geography matters. And it kind of feels like we've been entering blindly into an agreement of which we have no guaranteed control for a model gain that is at least in some projections we've seen. We've heard about some new projections that have come through this morning that are less than material, not guaranteed, and would arguably be swallowed up by inefficiencies created back here within the territorial authority, of which we've been provided no certainty around a plan to remove stranded overheads. Surely bringing in a structure that creates a culture of doing things that make sense, helping grow people into who they can be, and providing opportunity and space for innovation will drive outcomes that far exceed cookie cutter efficiencies. We need to talk less about our fears, concerns, or inadequacies, and more about what we can be, and have confidence in the fact that we can actually rise to this challenge ourselves. There's a whole bigger is better myth being thrown about, and I find it disappointing. Gather us up and put us alongside any of the top 3 players. We don't even come close. The scale argument for buying power is futile at a provincial level, in my view, and it isn't lost on me that advice from this very room during the Affordable Waters decision period weighed heavily on moving to the Canterbury group because it was the metros that added the required scale to bring costs down. Anything else was scratching the surface. It was logical then that we went with the biggest metro. Now, without a major centre to be seen, all the advice seems to have gone out the window. On consultation and conversations in community, the themes were clear and continue to be clear no matter who I talk to. Southern Water done well is the last cab on the rank. No one wants a ride on it. And if we believe the consultation to be some sort of litmus test for community sentiment, which I do, then the feedback was clear in terms of how a wide and diverse cross-section of our community, a number of who are considered community leaders, ranked their preference of the options. There was a resounding call to keep it local, followed by geographical quasi-localism. It couldn't be any clearer in my mind that the people we act for in the main do not want this. Hence the reason for the alternative that's put forward by a number of us today. Importantly, can we do it alone for the time being? And yes, I believe we can. We've heard we can. It'll be tough, but there's no reason not to. This decision is ours to make, not the Crown, not our current partner councils, not the consultants. And I didn't sign up for the role to act as an extension of central government. And I'm certainly not going to make my decision on the basis of what they see as being best for us. I'm focused on deciding what I believe is best for us. And if this government want to interfere with our decision, then I say let them. Let them step in and tell us they know what is best for us and that our perspective doesn't matter. We have to own our decision. We have to own our past decisions, own our problems, own the inevitability that some form of change and investment is necessary, and have the confidence in ourselves to own the solutions. We have a district to be bloody proud of. There are people who subscribe to the idea of supporting small communities, being in charge of their destiny, and I know we've actually got a few of them in this building and scattered around the community already. On decision-making, Churchill said, hasty work and premature decisions may lead to penalties out of all proportion to the issues immediately involved. Let us take the decision that gives us some breathing space and necessary time to understand where we're headed, but allows us to remain open to the idea of managing water differently in the future. If you believe in your heart that water ownership shouldn't be here solely with us, at least for the time being, then fine. I support your right to make that choice, but please don't sit here today and espouse words suggesting the Crown leaves us no alternative. The intent of the Act is clear. This is a decision to be made by us. We need to own our choice and own our decision. In the book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, the Horse talks about one of the greatest freedoms is how we react to things. And for those around this table who speak of less Wellington, more Waitaki, now might be just the time to act on those words.
Thank you. We might shorten this slightly, so I'll go to who would like to speak to the motion. Councillor Hopkins.
Well, since the last comment from Councillor Blackler, clearly a reference to something I said in the last election campaign and something that's been picked up by other people without attribution. I will defend myself. It is fanciful for local government in New Zealand to believe that central government, which acquires 90% of the revenue and has repeatedly imposed its decisions upon local authorities, it is fanciful to presume that they're not going to do that here in circumstances where they believe it is necessary to do so. We've heard that this morning from the DIA. I'm not in any way defending this. What I'm saying is the notion that Lyndon Winder's submission makes the point that this is not a decision like the Forester Heights one that is absolutely within our purview to make. There are other very significant forces watching and willing, through the correspondence they've shared with us, willing to impose their view on those councils that in their opinion don't meet the tests they have set. Now, to my mind, the problem with what we are about to vote on is that it does increase the risk of an imposed solution being forced upon us, or imposed upon us. And I personally am less comfortable with that than I am with us making a decision that, if you like, meets all the assessments of all the people who have given us advice, and clearly meets with the approval of and is deemed to be necessary to meet the financial sustainability requirements imposed by DIA. A number of issues I have with the particulars of the resolution. I noticed that Councillor Blackler, having proposed this, is now talking about it being a temporary measure, and is now also talking about the possibility of other associations and amalgamations, for instance, with northern councils who have yet to formally express any willingness to talk to us. It's all very well saying that some councillors at one meeting said they thought it was a good idea, but that has not been reflected in any of those councils actually formally saying, can we sit down and talk to you about partnering? The proposal we had in front of us that we voted down would have created the fourth biggest water services entity in the South Island. Only bigger, Christchurch, Dunedin and Selwyn District. Clearly a number of economies of scale could have been and would have been achieved, and more will be, maybe, should the Morrison Low assessment lead to a possible union with Mackenzie and Timaru, although that might now be with 3 other councils and not with us. I'm also genuinely concerned, and I would like the mover and seconder to consider amending this. I notice under 4, for clarity, this future discussion is not to relitigate the decisions above, but rather to explore key issues or themes raised. Now, sorry, you can't have it both ways. If you're going to explore key issues and themes, if you're going to include looking at various models adopted by other councils, then in fact you may end up relitigating the decision. And I'm deeply concerned that this is an attempt essentially to bind the council in a way that I think the actual information included in the motion nullifies. I stand by what I've said. In my view, that paragraph would be better to read, for clarity, this future discussion is to explore key issues or themes raised. And I'm also concerned that number 2 seems to say that the chief executive is obliged to agree. Request staff to prepare a water services plan that complies with matters set out in section 13 of the Local Government Water Services Preliminary Arrangements Act 2024 and the council's chosen proposed water services delivery model to be brought back to council for approval and certification by the Waitaki District Council Chief Executive. Well, the act, the legislation again, iron fist and velvet glove. The legislation says every chief executive of every council has to personally endorse the fact that the proposal is financially sustainable. What if the chief executive of this or any other council cannot in conscience say that, or believe they cannot in conscience say that? So I am concerned that 2 actually extends a power to the 2 elected members that in fact the Act does not allow. And I would want some consideration of rewording of that, because I think it's really important. So I reserve the right to come back with some amendments. So I'd just like to think about those for a moment or two, but I do raise those matters sincerely, not as an attempt to kind of clash with the mover, but rather to actually seek some enhancement of what he is proposing by way of these resolutions.
Councillor Blackler, do you have any comments on those 2 aspects?
Not really at this point in time. I guess Councillor Hopkins is welcome to, as he said, mull on any suggestions he might wish to make. The only comment I would make on number 2 is that it's essentially a precise copy of the original item as part of the recommendation put forward in the paper. So if the wording, I guess we move forward on the basis that if the wording was acceptable under that scenario, then it would be appropriate to put it here.
I think it's based on the fact that, as DIA have said, if it's a joint CCO, they're generally in favour. So there's not an issue there. If it's in-house, that's something they're going to look at, and the wording becomes, it's very relevant to that context. I would suggest that adding potential, perhaps, in front of approval and certification, or a decision on approval and certification, because that's what how the law states that. Happy for Mr. Harmley to make comment as well.
Yeah, so for clarity, if this motion is passed, we'll work to develop a water services delivery plan and use best endeavours to comply with the legislation. But I would need to take advice, because I'm bound by what the law says I should do, legislation says I should do, rather than what the council says I should do. So I would need to take advice on whether the water services delivery plan does pass the tests. But I would include that when the advice when it came back to council.
Okay, for the just some clarification on number 4. So the future discussion to not relitigate the decisions above, is that the decisions to adopt the enhanced in-house service delivery model? Is that what you're referring to?
No, decisions plural. But we're talking at this point in time and in the context of what we're submitting to the DIA on the 3rd of September.
That's precisely my point. The minute the recording of this meeting will show that Councillor Blackler devoted a considerable amount of his time advocating for this resolution by proposing that a Northern Union with other councils was more logical and gave economies of scale because of the metro and because of the 150,000 population number that would have been achieved. Now, that is not the same thing as adopting an enhanced in-house water services delivery unit. So all I'm saying is, in my view, for the second paragraph, the first clause contradicts the remainder of that particular sentence. For clarity, this future discussion is not to relitigate the decisions above, but rather to explore key issues and themes. Well, that does create the possibility of relitigation, particularly given Councillor Blackley's persistent, passionate, and unfortunately not necessarily fully responded to by the Northern Councils, his passionate advocacy for a Union North, which is not the same thing as an in-house unit. And equally, Councillor Blackley made the point in his presentation, where are the details for an in-house option and the Northern option? Well, if we don't have them, maybe we need to wait to get them before we vote on this.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just remind you of the question that I asked DIA relating to Rotorua's position, along with Whakatane, Apotiki and Corral, and what they're looking at. And I asked the question, is it acceptable? And the reply was yes. Now, that proposal is that the water is... Excuse me, councillor.
Councillors.
I didn't interrupt
Councillor,
you. Please give me the same
can
courtesy.
you carry on, Councillor Thompson, please?
I asked the question, was the Rotorua proposal acceptable? And the answer I got was yes, with the qualifications, because they are proposing that they remain in-house for 2 years while they examine the options, looking towards a CCO. So if our wording needs to be adjusted for that, without putting words in Councillor Blackley's mouth, I believe that the endeavour was to try and keep this as generic as possible, so that all options could be looked at.
To be fair, I think that goes to Councillor Hopkins' point that if we're saying we're not going to relitigate aspects, then all options don't seem to be on the table. It's just vague. I haven't got my head around it, having only received it this morning and been a bit busy since I did receive it. So I think it's reasonable to try and get clarification as opposed to the papers which we've had for well over a week. Councillor Blackley.
Well, I guess, to further address the context around item 2 and 4, I think with respect to 4, the intent is to try and reinforce the decision, for DIA, right, and that we're open to working differently in the future, rather than it being a decision in itself. But I guess item 2 is it's setting out clearly the order of operations in terms of the way in which the water service delivery plan is to be developed. It's not providing instruction to the CE to undertake his certification in a specific way, and as he's already alluded to, that qualification would be given at the time.
So would you mind in putting potential approval and certification in there? If that's seems to be what you're indicating is acceptable, rather than giving a direction, then is that acceptable?
I'd just simply ask if it was in there for the original motion, why is it being taken in the context that it is now? I don't see any need for the change in wording.
Because the original context was a joint CCO, and as you've heard from DIA, they are fully in favour of councils joining in. So it was a much more certain thing that they would that it was going to be acceptable for the CEO. The DIA have stated that was going to be acceptable. This is not so certain, as has been stated.
If someone wants to move an amendment, then I'm happy for that to happen, but I'm not willing to change the wording.
Councillor Hopkins, you wanted to move.
And I apologise to Councillor Thompson, but I did think that the qualification that was made by the DIA spokesperson that the endorsement of the 2-year pause or the 2-year in-house arrangement was conditional upon a JV emerging as a subsequent consequence was an important one, and I'm glad that you acknowledged that was indeed the case. Accordingly, but I do apologise, I'm sorry. I move the following amendments. That I propose an amendment to 1, agrees to adopt an in-house water services delivery unit for a minimum of the next 2 years as the council's model. I would move an amendment to 2, which would simply add the word consideration before the word approval. So to be brought back to council for consideration, approval and certification. And finally, 4, I would move that paragraph 2 read, for clarity, this future discussion is to explore key issues or themes raised. So I move those 3 amendments.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for those? I'll second them because they seem to make sense. So, absolutely.
So I just wanted to offer comment on the proposed resolution here and so the motion here and any amendments in terms of how this would be dealt with. So to be clear, we have to submit a water services delivery plan that's approved by this council by the 3rd of September. That is not many days away. So if you pass this motion today, I need to be clear, there will not be time to see if we can construct a partnership with South Canterbury councils. We would be submitting a water service delivery plan in-house. And I think, if I heard the DIA correctly, that they would assess it based on the next 10 years because there is no other partnership option available at the moment. It would just be a intent to explore. But whilst we've already done some exploration of that, it isn't available at the moment. So that's what would be coming back to council as a water service delivery plan. And from my understanding, what DIA advised today, which is consistent with their previous advice, that's what would be assessed on. The in-house option for the next 10 years as to whether it's sustainable. Even if your intent is that it's for the next 2 years and you want to explore other options, that's how we'll have to present it and that's how it will be assessed.
I'll be pushing back against the recommended or the suggested amendment, and that I think there's a danger in changing the wording here. They've been carefully considered and thought out, not just by myself, but in collaboration with myself, councillors Linwood, Percival, Ryan, and Thompson. So, I think the current wording is clear with a direction to proceed. It gives our staff certainty in what they are going to be working on in terms of the water service delivery plan to be delivered.
Okay, well, it's moved and seconded, so it's the amendments, the motion in front of us at the moment. I'm just speaking to that and taking on Councillor Thompson's comments. You can't have it both ways. Rotorua has said that they will keep it in-house until 2028, at which time they will transition into a CCO. That is not reflected in the wording here at all. And there's a pushback that Councillor Blackler's giving to that. I think the changes that are proposed through the amendment make sense. It makes sure that the legality of the situation is taken into account. and that there is a process that actually genuinely keeps options open. Are there anyone, Councillor Hopkins, you want to speak to
Yes,
the amendment?
I will. If we are to accept that this is a motion crafted by Councillors Blackwood, Linwood, Percival, Ryan and Thompson, it's also clear this morning that there's not necessarily absolute unanimity in terms of the opinions of those who have carefully crafted this resolution. Councillor Thompson asked a question about an in-house solution citing Rotorua and received answers from DIA saying, yes, that would be acceptable for a 2-year period, subject to a joint venture emerging at the end of that process. Now, to my mind, the resolution, the amendment that I have mooted and I will propose, and I accept Mr. Palmley's comments, but I would want the resolution to stand as amended, effectively articulates Councillor Thompson's position, which is at variance with Councillor Blackley's. What it says is it agrees to adopt an enhanced in-house water services delivery unit for a minimum of 2 years. It doesn't mean it can't go on longer, but it does also send the kind of signal that Councillor Thompson was seeking to receive from DIA. With regard to 2, the clear difference is not in the wording of the resolution, but the proposal in front of council. The first one was a proposal that DIA said, yes, we love it. This is necessary to achieve the financial sustainability requirements of the Act. We were also told that these in-house solutions weren't necessarily likely to receive that endorsement and were likely to see a lot more examination of our finances and the like. So all that 2 does is acknowledge that there is a legal duty on chief executives to certify financial sustainability, and I don't believe it is legitimate to impose a response in that regard in advance of any consideration. So that's why I added the word consideration. And again, I'm sorry, I think Councillor Blackler with 4 is essentially trying to close down the debate, having all this morning told us he wants to keep the debate open by working with other councils and involving associations and unions and JVs with councils not currently involved. So for all of those reasons, I think these are legitimate and considered amendments that don't undercut the intent of the motion, but do actually achieve, I think, a little bit of clarity and moderation that I regard as prudent and necessary.
Any other speakers to the amendments? I'll put them separately. Sorry. I'll put them separately, so it's in bold there on the screen. So adding in for a minimum of the next 2 years. So those in favour of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? I'll show of hands, please. So those in favour. That's carried. The second one is number 2 with the addition of for consideration for approval and certification. So yeah, it's not for consideration, comma, is it? It's
Consideration, comma, consideration, comma, approval. Okay.
well, that you're still keeping that contingent on there.
Yes, good. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Those in favour of that one, please say aye. Against? It's carried. And number 4.
Is the deletion of words, so it's not showing now that they've been deleted.
Right. So as written on the
As written.
on the screen, you're That's what you're intending, councillor Hopkins? Make sure that we got it right.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Everyone clear on that? Wait a minute while people compare their versions. Okay, I'll put it those in favour of that amendment, please say aye. Against? That's carried. Okay, so they've become part of the substantive motion. We go back to the original motion. So speakers to that, I think we've only had councillor Hopkins. Losing track. I'll say some things. I mean, I want to be clear. My preference would be to keep it in house. It's not something where I want to carve a third of the council activity off, essentially, and put it somewhere else. But when it makes sense, that's what it is. That's the reason I've backed the joint CCO. Transformation is about partnering to deliver better. It's not about keeping everything in house, even if it is taken out of silos. So we shouldn't be limiting our description of transformation to something where it's just based on silos in house. The reality is that the previous model was to have it for 2 years, still in house, and then into a CCO and have that time to create the CCO. This model doesn't give us time to work with other councils to develop a joint CCO that might eventually happen in a way that we co-create it. We're going to be a recipient of that, and it's going to cost us more, to be quite frankly. There's talk about this group to our north as being an established grouping. We've got one council that's decided to go alone for the next 9-10 years, whatever it was, that Waimati decided, and that's their right. It's hardly an established grouping in that sense. It only gives us a similar, if it was to be that one, it only gives us a similar population size to the southern grouping. It's only when the two groupings join together that it makes sense. And that's the issue with this. It's we will not be in a grouping for water that's necessarily a grouping that could become a unitary in the future. It just doesn't have the scale. And that's why I'll be voting against this particular option. It doesn't give us the savings that we need for our community so that they can afford water into the future much better than what the situation is here. We are elected as community leaders. We've got some community leaders who have submitted. But if each person around this table doesn't actually know more about the whole situation, then quite simply you haven't done your job. We've had access to much more information, much more context. Talking to someone who knows about irrigation, they know about irrigation better than we know. But they don't necessarily know about a whole lot of the other stuff. Talking to someone who is a hydrologist, knows about hydrology, but it doesn't mean they know about the economics in that situation. Talking to a vet about the imperfection, we'll put it politely, of councils, who thinks the only way to fix the imperfection is to keep doing stuff ourselves, it belies belief. So I respect those leaders for the things that they've done and the things that they do and the expertise that they have. But the people around this table should be more knowledgeable about the whole topic. It almost seemed like Councillor Blackler was accusing us of not being proud of Waitaki. I've been immensely proud of Waitaki. I've been proud to be its mayor for 12 years. I was a councillor for 9 years before that. There has been significant changes over that time, not all good, but generally speaking, there's a lot of positive things happening now and a lot of positivity in the community overall. And finally, we need to own our decision. So as was said, I want to own a decision where we make sure that it's affordable for our community to actually live here, to afford to pay their rates, and if it's water charges in the future, to be able to afford to pay those. We're not going to do that if we actually cut the opportunity for cost savings to the degree that we are. In saying that, I have a sixth, if this motion passed, so I have sixth one to add to that, but I'll just signal that might be coming up. So we'll see how we go on this discussion first. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Holding, thank you.
Just probably wasn't as articulate in my position earlier, but just wanted to say I accept where we're at and the future for the investment that's actually needed here and the partnerships. I didn't actually want to be ruling out our partnership with the Southern Group here, but I really was more about just some breathing space and some time and actually doing it strategically and having all the full cards in front of us before we go on a journey of which I can't sign up to. I was a little bit grappling in the dark with the unknown. I mean, the Mayor talks about affordability for our community. I know it's going to be a challenge either ways, but I can't say this is what the price is going to be either way either. So for me, it was more about, I know this is probably the right way, but it needs more time to go the way, but if that's pretty.
Councillor Cowles.
Thanks, Mayor Kircher. Yeah, I suppose for me, I mean, I want to be pretty clear here. I mean, the decision I've made today has actually been my own through many discussions. And it's based on the information provided and the advice reviewed. I have full confidence in the capability and professionalism of the councils that we've engaged with today. So this isn't a reflection of the joint one with Clutha, Central Otago and Gore. They're credible partners, and I've seen firsthand the value that they have brought to the table on the flip side of this. But my concern is not with their ability, but with the fact that as a council, I don't feel we've given equal time and consideration to the full spectrum of the options that are available to us. And whilst the joint CCO model has been thoroughly explored and tested, other potential models, including staged partnerships, shared services with different groupings or hybrids of both, haven't been put through the same lens at this point. And I do acknowledge that that's been time critical and due to the fact that some of this legislation is not even passed as yet. And that's why I'm supporting this motion as a first step and not as a final destination. I support moving forward with an ARNS in-house model for now, but I believe we must stay open to further exploration. We need to be creating a framework that allows for us to reassess and re-engage and evolve, especially with the operating environment or local government reform shifts around us. But I think it's about keeping options alive while making progress. So that's the reason that I'll be supporting what we've got there today.
Thank you. Anyone else? You've already spoken, Councillor Hopkins.
No, I spoke to my amendments. I'm not speaking. This is now the substantive motion.
You were speaking about the you were referencing Councillor Blackler's comments about the South Canterbury group quite a bit. So I took that as you speaking to it. Anyone else before I go to Councillor Blackler for a right of reply? Okay. Sorry, I didn't see you put your hand up.
No, I don't think mine. No, I really actually just echo Councillor Cowell's comments. I guess I haven't spoken a lot to this during all of the workshops and meetings that we've had up until this point, because I mean, I'm not an expert in these matters and I want to learn and to keep an open mind. And as part of that, like I have been looking to see what other councils around the country are doing in this space. And it just feels right to me that we keep our options open while having, you know, like a fallback of the in-house option. You know, this Southern option has been well developed, and I have a lot of respect for those involved in that process and the work and gratitude for the work that's been done so far. And I think, you know, Kircher, earlier you said like it hasn't been a rushed decision. There's been a lot of work gone into it. But if that's the case, why don't we have the same level of detail as the other options? And, you know, I sure we've been told that there hasn't been the same willingness from our Aoraki neighbours to engage, but I just don't believe that we've shown that same willingness and that we've been quite locked into the Southern option. So I'd like to keep our options open going forward, and I think this doesn't shut the door.
Councillor Blackley.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I guess I don't have too much more to add other than just wanting to basically endorse Councillor Cowell's comments as well, because I think he's captured the essence of what the intent is behind this wording. So yeah, on that basis, and the confidence that is the approach that we're trying to illustrate, that we're wanting to take here. I just ask for others to support what's on the table.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Thompson, do you want this by division as well?
I suppose, to be fair, in consistency, we should.
Okay, though, because this has got quite a number of aspects to it, I will take them separately, which, sorry, increases your workload a little bit there, Arlene. So on number 1, as amended, those in favour, please raise your hand. And those against. Councillor McCone, what were you doing? Were you for?
Sorry, it cut out there, so I've missed the last probably 2 minutes before we come back in. So yeah.
Okay, so we're just voting on them separately. So that was for the first, the first motion.
Yeah.
Agreeing to adopt the enhanced in-house water services delivery unit.
Yeah, I'll vote for favour.
Okay, thank you. Number 2, requesting staff to prepare the service delivery plan that complies, blah, blah, blah. So those in favour?
Yeah.
And against? Number 3 will exercise its right to exit the joint arrangement with Central Otago, Clutha and Gore under the current commitment agreement. Those in favour? And against?
So that's Councillor Hopkins and the Mayor against. Councillor Holding, you.
There's no ability to keep this open, I think. No.
So you're for that. Number 4, agreeing to further discuss details surrounding the future management of water at another time, which we're doing anyway. Number 5, notes the public submissions received and thanks all submitters for their feedback. Those in favour? And I'm moving a 6th one, instructs officers to provide clarity to our community as immediately as possible how much more the in-house option will cost them over the joint Southern Group CCO according to the most up-to-date modelling available. Do I have a seconder for that? So very quickly speaking to that, this is a big decision. It's got a big impact on our community. In choosing to go with the heart of the information, and I think for some of the people, there's been a lot of information that's gone out to all of you, and there's been webinars and opportunities to learn a heck of a lot about water over time. I've shared a lot of the joint council, joint group agendas and presentations and so forth. So I've done all I can to make sure that people are as informed as possible. I think it's important that we do inform our community on what the latest modelling is, and so that they understand that. Personally, I'd also like to have an understanding of how many extra staff members we're going to need over this next period of time, because there's been a very big focus on staff numbers and on salaries. We will have some of those costs over the next 2 years anyway, and some of those costs also include things like Tamata ROI's charges, which is around $100,000. We're going to have a charge from Commerce Commission as well, which we don't know how much that is, I don't believe yet. So it's getting an understanding of what all that means so that our community is better informed as well. It's a complex issue, and I don't. It'd be helpful for them to understand just how complex it is, because some of them I don't think appreciate all of the challenges we've got. Councillor Ryan.
I just wonder whether you'd consider an amendment to that in terms of keeping the community informed, I guess, on a regular basis going forward, because providing that information I think is important, but obviously there's work to do in this space, and I think actually committing ourselves to regular updates to the community in terms of how this work is progressing is important as well.
Yeah, which was in the previous one. I added the one around webinars as an example for making sure that there was a better understanding about aspects of the joint CCO. But if you want to, yeah, I can just add along with other updates, regular updates. Councillor Hopkins, you happy with that wording? Yeah. Any other discussion? Put it. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Mickey, I endorse this because I think it is really important that some of the business leaders and others who criticised this proposal, perhaps, and the community more generally, need to understand the implications of some of the decisions made by Wellington, decisions which incidentally got opposition in Waitaki and Clutha, but were the JV proposal was endorsed in Central Otago and was a dead heat 41% in favour of two alternative options in Gore. But if you look at what the DIA and others are telling us, you've got this whole FFO thing, the local government funding agency, where the JV gets 8%. I think an in-house gets 12%, and a standalone business unit has to borrow even more. You've got concept consulting indicating or signalling that there's a minimum of 15% efficiencies or a midpoint of 25%. In terms of this, you've got annual savings proposed with regard to the joint venture of, as I said earlier, 9.9 million in 2034, or 13.5 if you go with concept consulting, and 40.9 million by 2054 and 65.6 million. Longer term things like this, net savings 2054 up to 1.5 billion, it is predicted. Now, clearly that a lot of that modelling is predicated on current council budgets, and it may well change if Tomato Arroway further reduces the standards or further moderates the remedies or the measures needed to achieve higher water quality standards, particularly in smaller supplies. But these are all facts that need to be, I think, shared with people. And the proposal we have opted for today is the second most expensive of the three we had. Clearly, a good deal of data to assess. The Northern Union model was severely compromised by the difficulty of getting comparable and detailed data. So in the end, you had an analysis of the three. JV was cheapest, in-house business unit next, and standalone WSE was the most expensive of the lot. But those are facts that I think perhaps haven't been suitably canvassed and should be.
Thank you. No one else? I will put it. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? That is carried. Thank you very much. I'm a wee bit concerned about one of the comments earlier, which seemed to malign our other councils. The comment that was made that something along the lines no one else wanted to go with the Southern group. Was that, Councillor Blackwell, just to get clarity on that, was that what you said?
Oh, look, Mayor Kircher, if there was any offence taken by the, my wording could have been better or considered better by others, then I'm happy to withdraw and apologise for those specifics.
Thank you. I mean, we had a good relationship with them. It started out as Otago and Southland, and various ones dropped off. I think we will find that some of those ones, like in that area and also elsewhere, will be getting the strict message that actually they've got to join up. And yeah, it doesn't put us in a good position, unfortunately, but that is democracy, and that is where we've landed. Again, I just thank my fellow mayors for being here today, for all the work that we have done together. I'm sorry that it's ended quite so suddenly. We sort of got to the altar, but didn't quite carry it off. So thank you, and we wish you all the very best. I think as a group of three, if you can get your councils over the line on Thursday and next Monday, then it'll be a good solid group still. So wish you all the best on that. So thank you very much. Thanks, staff, for all the work that you've done on this. You now have a lot more work to be done, including redoing a long-term plan potentially. So happy for you to make a comment, Mr.
Yeah, just in terms of the next steps, our focus, given the timescale, will be on the water services delivery plan. And as I stated that with the resolution you've made today, that will be based on in-house, because there aren't other options at this stage to explore. So the DIA have reiterated that they will be assessing it on a 10-year in-house water services delivery plan. I think in terms of sequencing, we'll need to work through that and give you some advice back. But clearly you agreed just over a week ago a long-term plan that was based on water going out. I think in terms of sequencing, we would be looking at where we landed with the government's assessment of our water services delivery plan, if indeed we get one that's compliant to submit, before we decide on timing that. But my thinking at the moment is it'd be for the next council to essentially immediately go into a long-term plan amendment, instead of thinking about, the next long-term plan. It would have to go into a long-term plan amendment and revisit the issues around the water programme, the debt, the other decisions you made around the keeping the rates down, because we'd have to recast all of that and take it back through the process. But that'll be for the next council to decide.
Thank you very much, and thanks everyone who's attended, who's watched the live stream, and for the DIA people, thank you very much for your help as well. We look forward to getting our water services delivery plan to you by the 3rd of September. So with that, thank you, John, for staying up so late. Off to bed for you now. Thanks very much.
Quite nice. Yep.
Okay, and with that, I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you, everyone.